rooms that they're worried about. It's the floor space to run events.
Well, if they just move all the fantasy people to a different hotel.
There's a pond out back.
Well, speaking of, I was talking with Jeff Carroll from Podhammer last night. He was saying that DogCon last year, during 7th edition, had over 150 participants. And this year, it was down to about 40 guys.
Wow.
And,
Holy cow.
Yeah, I mean, 8th edition just, I guess, really killed it, particularly down there. And it's a shame because those Australian guys, with the fantasy system in particular, really pushed to do, I think, a lot for wargaming in general, but particularly with his show and the other outlets that those guys are doing down there with all the push for the ETC stuff. And
he can join us.
I don't know.
Yeah, right. You know?
I mean, I think.
Well, he's a War Machine player now.
Well,
out of the bag.
to piggyback off of that, Chris, who just stepped out, on our forums, he put up a link to an article. Basically, it showed the top 5 miniatures game sellers. Number 1 was 40K. Number 2, I believe, was War Machine. Number 3 was Fantasy. Number 4 was Hordes. And I don't remember what number 5 was.
BattleTech.
No, but I do want to pick up that.
I got my 25th anniversary yesterday, yeah.
$50 for the whole thing?
With that kind of a breakdown where Fantasy is after War Machine.
Yeah.
What does that say about Fantasy? Or what does it say about War Machine?
Tomb Kings, next one.
Oh, both.
Well, actually, we had a discussion yesterday. Bill and Tor and myself and who else was sitting there? Anyway, a couple other people were sitting there, and we were talking with
one of the guys from Battlefront.
Yeah, and we were talking in particular about the industry, and he was asking us, how much do you think per year the industry makes?
Flames of War was number 5. Thank you for reminding me.
Well, that's such a hard thing to figure out because none of these companies publish data.
About $350 million a year in the miniatures gaming industry. Yeah, and he says 85% of that's GW. The other 15% is everybody else. So regardless of whether fantasy has fallen that far, and I'm not saying it's not a stumble on GW's part. Again, I don't play fantasy, but I do know a lot of like highly competitive fantasy players who are pretty much done playing it competitively for the time being. GW still has a lot of ground to lose before a game like War Machine and really.
I do see some positive about this with War Machine coming up and being a potential future threat. It's just going to have to force GW to step up their game a little bit more.
Oh, I'm
they
sure.
say, hey, we suddenly actually have real competition, and to compete effectively, we have to, keep the prices in line, and we have to keep up the quality. And I admit that quality from GW has been absolutely outstanding consistently year after year after year. I'd love to see the prices do the same.
Well, you talking quality of models or quality of rules?
Talking about that list that
Quality
you put on
of
our
models.
forums, the top 5.
Oh, yeah.
Quality rules, I think the other game's going to have a flat beat.
I mean, if I may interject with that and going on what you said, Carl, is the biggest thing that I've seen is maybe a dozen models of fantasy going through my site. It's just as an order. One being the Orc Codex.
Can you mention your site?
That's brokenforge.com.
There we go.
I ran out of breath. I had to.
You got excited,
I got stickers finally. But the rest and the majority, I will say, has been 40K.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no doubt that
War Machine just sold out.
It's huge. But it's interesting that, you guys are getting so heavily into War Machine. War Machine kind of passed through our area already and went away.
Really? Same with ours.
Yeah.
Also, the tsunami went right.
Yeah, I mean, in essence, it came in, people played it for a while, and they were like, hey, this is pretty cool, and then after a while, it's like, yeah, nobody's playing it.
Yeah.
You can still get a game occasionally.
Yeah.
We're on a second surge.
And actually, that's not true. I mean, more than that, you can get a game, pretty often. I mean, there are groups that play it, but, the game store that I like hanging out in the most, and has, the best rank, it's primarily 40K. I mean, and that's where the competitive fantasy guys come from.
Do you think it's maybe a 15% War Machine?
I think that would probably be a pretty good. I think that would probably be a pretty good estimate.
It's
Yeah.
almost what you expect.
Yeah.
How old are those numbers for 85% being GW?
About 24 hours old.
Yeah.
I have no idea. But this is a guy. This is a guy who formerly worked for GW.
Because since
Now we're
edition
there.
really isn't that
Hopefully
old.
not getting
Not
it.
even
And if those numbers are a year old, there's a lot of people who just dumped on fantasy and went right over to War
We have
Machine.
no idea, and I have no way to validate it.
Yeah.
But I mean, he was very forthcoming with it, and he was basically saying, our group is a very small part of that, and so everybody's vying for this
Yeah, even if we can't validate their numbers, I perfectly believe them.
Yeah, I don't doubt it at all. He was extremely knowledgeable.
I'm not a War Machine player. Toro would probably actually like to be if we could get some more games in our area.
It's the one game that I actually beat Bill at, so he won't play it anymore.
Oh, yeah. That's fine. Sure, we'll go with that. That's fine. My thing is, despite that though, the company does a lot of things right. Like you look in your Adepticon grab bag, and there's a starter set for Privateer Press in there.
Yeah.
That's what was it, like 1,500 people registered or something like that?
$35 ticket, $50 gift bag.
Yeah.
Just one item.
For one item. So
How did you get anything from GW in your bag?
No, exactly. That's
got a little tiny bag of bits. Oh wait, that wasn't from you.
It wasn't from So that's the thing, though. Is like if you're giving away stuff like this in huge cons where there's 1,500 or more people here that are all getting a free starter set for Privateer Press, how many of those people are going to go? I got this $50 set. I'm not going to just eBay it. Let's pick up the rules and play.
It's not just that, but a lot of people that were out sitting on the fence, like. I'd like to, but I don't know. But the second they open up their box, they're like, well, I was thinking of playing it, but now that I have a starter box,
okay, I'll try
let's do it.
Yeah. No, it's incredibly smart.
Well, here's another thing too. Well, I mean, I don't want to be a hater, but it's just indicative of something. When you walk down the hall, I see a big, huge, Dark Age poster. I see a big, huge Privateer Press. A couple of those. I don't see anything from GW.
Yeah.
That's been consistent.
Gen
Con this
Well,
past
no,
year.
no, no.
independently ran, so I don't see.
The only thing you do see from Games Workshop is the models on every table of every game.
Exactly. So what is it? So I mean, it's like we're doing it, obviously.
You see Forge World with
So is it that GW feels they don't have to compete
They don't
by
have to
doing
work
these
for it,
things?
or
Because we do all this for them.
Yeah.
That's true.
But Forge World didn't even really have like a sign or anything.
Did they need to?
You just follow the freaking line.
If there was a sign, I never would have gotten nice.
That would have been a
I
20
think it was earlier today.
a riot.
Me and Dan had a conversation with good old Carrot.
Oh my God.
And the one thing that he said that made me watch, I mean,
Who's this? I'm sorry.
Eric.
He's
one of our
Some
listeners.
guy on our forums, keep in mind he's a GW shareholder. So this is why he has that viewpoint.
If not
He's trying to get hired
he's a
into
very
the
big
industry,
fan
no
of-
less.
But the one thing he said, well, I already need to walk away, but that really made me want to walk away, is like, GW doesn't need to show up. The game supports itself.
That's an interesting point. And often I'm extremely confused by GW's
Business model?
Yeah. and marketing practices and this kind of thing. But I have to imagine if they're 85% of $350 million, there has to be some logic there. I mean, I don't know what it is. It's Greek to me.
But maybe it's the hot chick at the bar that's just kind of blowing everybody off. Everybody's looking at her.
Yeah, I don't get it, but it's doing well.
But
And
guess
honestly,
what?
I still love
One
it.
day that hot chick is no longer hot anymore, and she's wondering why she's alone at the bar.
That's a good point too. And
very true.
And what are we seeing? What are we seeing?
And I think we're starting to see her age.
And that is
Hence the
A couple-
evolution.
a couple of years ago, I found one of the GW's, I guess, postings to their shareholders about where they described their company. One of the things they did mention is they intentionally do no advertising whatsoever. They used to actually advertise in trade magazines, advertise wherever, or promote themselves. They don't do it anymore because their goal is word of mouth advertising because that's the cheapest advertising possible. So they don't put any money into advertising whatsoever. While all these other companies are throwing money around. That might work. I don't know how much of a long-term strategy that is.
I mean, it goes in hand to hand because look what we got right now that was given to us. Word of mouth advertising.
Yeah.
What is this?
Security sales.
Yeah.
Very true.
If you could introduce yourself too, and your
Hi, it's Lathan M. Go by Die Hard on the forums for just as kind of a gift for the 40K crew here and all the people that play 40K. I ended up making custom resin purity seals, which I mean is
Oh, they're fucking awesome.
They're awesome.
I mean, it's,
By word of
I'm wearing
mouth
it right
as of
now.
yesterday because we want to know where they came from.
I had my servitor, weld one onto my leg earlier.
And it's
And then I
this
walked.
word of mouth that
Then you climb some stairs.
why should they pay?
yeah, I mean,
Why should they put an article in the paper or in the local or anything like this when you got the
actually,
dedication?
I have
for
a
that?
really interesting story about that, and they, in a way, okay, maybe they aren't advertising, but they are doing a lot of Black Library publishing as well. And interestingly enough, last night I caught a cab with an older cab driver. The guy must have been close to his 60s. Pulls up, I get in, my buddies get in. He goes, hey, what's going on in there? He goes, does that have anything to do with the Warhammer books? And I'm like, well, yeah, it does. And I said, why? Do you read them? And he goes, oh, yeah, you know, I read them all the time. And he reaches into his seat and he pulls out Fly the Eisenstein.
Wow.
And I'm like, well, where'd you get that? And he goes, oh, I buy them at this used bookstore all the time. I bought the Space Marine Omnibus and I started reading. We got a big long discussion about it. And I'm like, dude, you gotta go in there. And the author, he's like, oh yeah, I've read Gaunt's Ghost. I'm like, dude, the author's in there. Go in there.
This is a needle in a haystack. Stop.
But I mean, what are the odds?
Yeah.
You know, what are the odds?
Well, I mean, they have a presence too in video gaming industry.
Oh, huge.
Which goes hand in hand with tabletop, and it's even a more widespread industry. And I think what we've seen in the past 5 years with the Dawn of War series.
Which is awesome.
Real-time strategy is,
I like the old one better. The original.
I did. For replayability, I definitely like the old one. But I like the storyline of this one.
They're doing a lot there. They always have been there, but recently it's just been so much better. It's getting out to a much broader audience, So is that advertising? No. But
sort of.
It's bringing them in.
Yeah, his promotion, it may not be advertising, but damn sure is promotion.
Yeah, it's true. It's one thing that they're doing better now than they did pretty much ever before. Is they're not advertising. They're not showing up to tournaments, even with a guy from the bunker that's 3 minutes away.
Yeah.
They're actually lending their IP out to some companies like Fantasy Flight, like THQ, to put out games. There was something on a video form. I don't know. I didn't bother to watch it. But they're doing all these things to actually put the hobby out there a little bit more and make it a little bit more mainstream, I guess, which is a good way. At least they're doing that.
The other thing you got to look at is